Welcome to Sunday Scaries with Kirsten Curious, where bedtime stories are anything but comforting. Tonight's tale takes us into an old house on Willow Lane, where a forgotten attic holds more than dust and shadows. A family discovers a painting that should never have existed, one that watches them as much as they watch it. This is the story of the painting in the attic. The house on Willow Lane kept its own weather. In summer it held a cool breath that gathered under door frames and paled the windows. In winter it exhaled a mineral cold that tasted like old stone. People said it had good bones, but people didn't talk about the attic. They moved in on a pale Saturday, the kind of day that feels scrubbed clean. Boxes stacked themselves into little cities, chairs found corners, the dog made exploratory circles and finally collapsed by the skirting board with a groan. By late afternoon, the family could walk from the front door to the kitchen without sidestepping a single book or a lamp. When the father pulled out the last strip of tape from the last carton, a soft sound opened up above them like a question. A faint scratch, then another. The ceiling seemed to listen. "There are squirrels," the mother said. She wanted there to be squirrels. The child looked up and asked if the house had an upstairs, on top of the upstairs. The father smiled and fetched the torch he kept in the junk drawer because every drawer becomes a junk drawer when you move. The attic hatch was a square in the hallway ceiling, circled with a dim halo of plaster dust. The wooden pole with the hook had been left by the previous owner, propped behind the coats. He pulled, the hatch gave reluctantly. The ladder whispered down. The smell that descended with it was not animal. It was something like old varnish and rain that never dried. He climbed first. The light from his torch stood up everywhere. He climbed first. The light from his torch stood up every web and nail head like a little moon rays. The attic had a steep, spine-like roof. The joists arched like ribs. Boxes lay about with their mouths open, filled with cloth and books and a long-dead Christmas. Dust softened the hard edges of everything. In the far corner, something leaned against the rafters, wrapped in yellow sheeting and roped like a parcel. He tugged it free, and the rope shed brittle fibres. The sheeting fell. A painting looked back at him, tall and narrow. The canvas stretched tight within a black wooden frame that had once been handsome. The subject? Their living room. Not a version of it, not a generalization, not a memory. Their living room. The crooked lamp listing near the sofa, the nick in the coffee table shaped like a tiny crescent, the print of the heron above the mantel that they had hung at noon and adjusted twice since. The brushwork was confident, the colours sat quiet and exact. He stared until his eyes watered. He told himself a previous owner must have loved the room and captured it. He told himself many things. Then he carried the painting down the ladder because it felt wrong to leave it there, wrong to turn his back and let it watch the emptiness of the attic. They set it on the floor against the wall. The child pressed her nose near the varnish and made a pleased sound. The dog barked once at his painted self, then looked embarrassed. The mother found the signature sketched tiny into the lower right corner, a single initial, dark inside the print, hard to see unless you looked from the side. "Who paints a room like it is?" she said. "Not how they wish it were." The father said that they would leave it out until they decided what to do. Night laid itself in the windows like a cool hand. They ate on their laps. The dog sighed. Somewhere above, faint as a mouse exhaled, the attic made a sound again. In the morning, the painting had changed. The child noticed first. She stood with her cereal bowl and said, without ceremony, that the blue blanket in the picture was folded the wrong way. In the real room, the blanket was flung in a domestic swoop across the sofa arm. In the painting, neat squares lay caged under themselves. The child liked the way the stitched lines made little windows. The mother felt a strange heat in her face. She tested the blanket's weight in her hands. She told herself this meant nothing. The father took the painting back to the hallway and turned it to face the wall. After lunch, he turned it back again. In the canvas, the curtains had been drawn. In the room, daylight washed the glass. The dog would not come within 2 meters of the frame. His claws clicked on the wood, then carried him elsewhere as he had remembered something urgent in another part of his small life. On the third day, a coffee cup that had gone missing appeared in paint on the table. A ring of dark liquid circled its base like a bruise. That evening, while the mother folded the laundry, she found the missing cup behind the stack of books, still damp inside, leaving a ring on the wood that was the twin of the painted one. She didn't call anyone. She wiped the ring with her sleeve and then with polish until the wood shone too much. The air tasted like lemons and nerves. On the fifth day, the painting watched them eat dinner. It did not depict them, not at first. It showed the table with plates placed as they had been in the morning, the salt at a diagonal to the pepper. It showed the light left on above the stove by accident. It showed the child's drawing taped to the fridge, the tape puckering at one corner. The mother, who had begun to check the painting, the way that some people check the locks, stood in front of it after a meal and felt her throat pull tight. The next morning, the painted plates were smeared with the colours of last night's food. The chair backs bore the silhouette of heads. Someone is getting into the house, the mother said. She did not believe that. Even her fear did not believe that, but it had to be something. The father changed the locks. He checked the windows. He set a chair under the attic hatch like a guard. The dog slept with his head up and his nose moving, reading the air. On the seventh day, the painting included them. They stood in their own living room, reduced to brushstrokes, precise enough to carry the weight of a mouth or the slope of a shoulder. The mother's hair was caught mid-turn, as if she had heard a small sound and turned towards it. The father's hand hovered near the light switch. The child lay on the rug, limbs abandoned, her mouth open in the heavy sleep of children. The dog had moved to the door, ears sharpened to points. In the darkest corner of the painted room, there was a shape. It was only a suggestion at first. Vertical where it should not be, taller than the door, thinner than a person could be and still be a person. The brushwork lost detail there. The vanish went dull. The shape tilted its head. You could tell that. You could feel it, though there was nothing to resolve, as if the paint carried a suggestion of weight that was not paint. They did not speak about it in front of the child. They put cartoons on and stood in the hallway quietly. The father's neck flushed the colour it was when he stood too long in the sun. The mother said it was a trick of the light. He said tricks belonged to someone. He pulled the painting into the kitchen and set it face down against the wall. The frame made a flat sound on tile. Then he returned 10 minutes later and lifted it because he could just not stand not knowing. The shape had moved. Now it stood behind the couch. The painted father's head was turned as if he felt cool air on his neck. The painted mother's hand was on the child's shoulder. The dog in the painting had begun to turn as if it was caught between two objects of devotion. His eyes were two small flecks of brown paint and terror. Enough, the father said. He carried the painting up the ladder into the attic, back to the corner where it had leaned for years. He told himself that the dark would starve it. He told himself that the house would exhale and the strange weather would clear. That night, a draft crawled down the stairwell like a living thing. The mother rose at 3 to use the bathroom and stopped in the hall. The attic ladder had lowered itself. The hinge let out a slow, tired sound as the wind swung it. The pole with the hook lay on the floor, as if it had been slipped or been put down. The square of the hatch opened into an unmoving dark. Her skin tried to decide between goosebumps and sweat. She closed the hatch with the pole and pretended in the morning that she had not found it. On the 9th day, the painting returned by itself. It leaned against the wall exactly where it had first leaned, in the place that the light from the back door fell in a long bar. No scuff marks marred the stair treads. No flecks of paint dotted the hallway. The dog whined without a sound and put his head under the table. The child began to cry without knowing why she had begun. It showed their bedroom then. The bed, the white duvet. The clock on the nightstand reads 2:17. The mother's hair fanned like a halo, the father on his back with his mouth open a little, the child asleep between them because some nights you just decide to be permissive. At the foot of the bed, the shape stood. Its head was no longer a smear, but a suggestion of a narrow chin, its shoulders shaped wrong, as if someone had made a person out of wire and then bent it twice. The mother drew the curtains in the real bedroom in the middle of the afternoon. The light went grey. The father turned the painting to face the wall again and carried it into the hallway. He said that they would go to a hotel tonight. He said that they would come back with a van and a friend and a good hammer. The child watched them with the clean terror of a very young person, which is terror without stories to explain it. At 2:17 a.m., the child woke because someone was humming a thin, wrong little tune. The father woke because cold air threaded his spine. The mother woke because the dog's entire body tightened against her leg. They did not scream. They did not leap. They arranged themselves into silence as prey does. Then the father moved, barefoot and slow, into the hall. The carpet whispered under him. The house held its breath. He believed he would find the attic hatch down again. He believed he would find the front door ajar and the wind in the hedges. He believed many things. He turned the corner and saw instead that the painting had turned itself to face outward. No one had touched it. The black frame was just a mouth. The living room within it was empty. No child, no couch, no dog, no human shape. The lamp stood, the heron hung, the coffee table waited, and nothing else drew the eye. The father felt relief so sudden it looked like nausea. The relief lasted the length of a blink. In the lower left corner of the painting, something small had been added. So small you might have missed it if your eyes were still greedy for the center. Brushstrokes indicated a steep angle, a wedge of wood, the rough suggestion of two hands on a rung. A figure, thin as a spill of ink, was climbing a ladder inside the frame, not down, up. He did not call out. The sound he made was the sound of a person makes, when exertion meets the weight heavier than expected. The air left him and did not return properly. He stepped back. The painting did not change. The house made a sound above him that was not quite a footstep and not quite the settling of timbers. It was the intake before a word. He moved towards the bedroom door and put his hand on the wood. The wood was really cold. On the other side, the dog made a low noise that was not a growl. He flattened his palm and felt the tiniest tremor run through the fibers, as if something larger stepped onto the landing and changed the last balance of the house by a fraction. He looked back one last time, because you always look. The painting now held a second small detail. In the far upper right of the painted ceiling, a narrow square had opened. The attic hatch painted was ajar. He thought of the attic smell, of varnish and rain that never dried. He thought of the rope fibre caught under his thick fingernail from the day he unwrapped the canvas. He thought of the way the dog would not come close, of the way the child had started drawing ladders in the margins of everything. There are moments when the world narrows so much you could just not put your thumb and forefinger around it and pinch. He stood inside that small ring. The house listened, the cold pressed closer. The gentle weight came to rest on the crown of his head. It was only air. It was not only air. From the dark above, exactly where no one stood, came the soft scrape of wood on wood, like a hatch easing back into place. In the morning, the mother woke up at an ordinary hour. The clock read 7:12, which is a safe number. The child breathed softly, hair stuck to her forehead. The father lay on his back with his eyes open too wide and his mouth open just enough to show a line of teeth. She touched his shoulder. His skin held the cool of a room not warmed yet. She told herself nothing for a full minute. Then she told herself everything at once. The painting in the hall The painting in the hall showed the living room again, washed with the little small gold of early light. In it, the sofa sat a little too far from the wall, as if it had been pushed back recently. Something like dust fell through the painted air. You could nearly see it if you did not look at it directly. In the lower right corner, as if caught mid-fall on a brush that had been lifted too quickly, a single dark hair had been painted where none had been before. It curled on the painted floorboards like punctuation. By noon, the police had taken statements. By evening, neighbours offered casseroles because this is what people do when they cannot warm a room. The house declined, the attic closed its mouth, the dog lay with its nose to the skirting, and followed something that did not pass. The painting stays. Some days the curtains in it move when the real ones do not. Some nights, if you stand in the hall and ignore your reflection in the glass of the frame, you can see the suggestion of a ladder at the edge of the world inside. One rung, then another, then the hint of narrow hands. If you watch long enough, there will always be a moment when the living room in the painting is empty. That is the moment that makes the house weather. That is the moment the air tastes like rain that never dries. That is the moment to go back to bed, close your eyes, and pretend you do not hear the intake before a word. And that was tonight's Sunday Scary. Sleep well, and remember to never turn your back on the attic, because sometimes what you find up there is already watching you.